So test, Akshat and Simon, you hear me?
Yes.
I hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Do you both hear me? I hear you both.
Yes, we hear
Yeah.
you.
Perfect.
All right, good. So welcome everyone. We will start in about 1 minute, and I see that people are on the way to join this webinar, and I can start to. This is our second webinar that we do, Concealed Wines, and the idea with the webinar is to provide guidance to our suppliers, how the market works. And today's topic is try and understand and point out the differences in the monopoly markets, Sweden, Finland, and Norway. Where it's of course it's a lot of similarities in the tender system, but we're going to focus on the differences in this today. And with me today in the studio, I have Akshat and Simon, my colleagues, and we all work with different things in Concealed Wines, but all are to some extent involved in the purchase procedure. While we handle different steps. And Akshat is taking the main responsibility. So we are the persons that are going to present. Akshat and Simon, should we start or should we wait a bit? What do you say? Let's start.
Maybe we can wait 1 minute. One more minute.
Yeah, we can wait 1 minute and then start.
Okay, good. I will start with the next slide. Then we will take it a bit slow in the beginning. All right. So what will we cover today? We're going to speak, as said, about the differences in the three markets, but we're going to start and look into a bit of what type of things that sells in the market. And we will focus on wine for most of the figures. Then we're going to look a bit on the taxation in the different markets and the shelf pricing. And after we go on to the tendering differences in different steps, followed by a Q&A section. And when it comes to question and answers, please feel free to use the LinkedIn chat in order to put down questions. And our colleague Leah will try to respond to questions directly, but also for some questions we will take later in the webinar. And what we did last webinar and that we will do today as well is that we're going to take down all the questions, and then we will summarize them and add them in the end of the presentation, and then we will email out the presentation along with the question and answer section. And also in this document there will be a reference list with the links and also references of that could be useful. And then a small noticement is that we have directed this more to the wine product. However, I know it's also breweries and distilleries that participate and probably intermediates that work with all type of products. The tendering process is more or less the same for the other product types. So you can have that in mind, even though we directed more for wine. Good. But then we will start off with some figures, and I will let Simon present. Simon?
Yeah. So we are just going to have a quick overview of the wine sales in the different markets and how big they are. So 2022, you can see Sweden have a population of 10.4 million people, Norway 5.3, and Finland 5.5. So Sweden is for sure the biggest country, and but if you look at the total sales in Sweden, the sales are quite much more than just the double. It's more or less three times as big as in Norway, and it can be a little bit regarding the prices, that the prices are a little bit lower in Sweden, but also that a lot of Norwegian people buy their wines in Sweden because, well, they are bordering countries, so they go over to Sweden and buy their wines. And you can also see in Finland that the sales are a bit lower, and in Finland the population go out over to the Baltic countries and buy their wines a bit more as well. The Swedish people go to German and buy beer and wines, but it's more beers. So, and then when you go down to other sales products, you see that the sales in Sweden are much higher than Norway and Finland. That's because this is the volumes. So we are 313,000 liters. It's because this is the figures of the monopoly sales, and in Sweden, the monopoly sell beer, all beers that are over 3.5 percentage in alcohol is only sold by the monopoly. In Norway and Finland, you're allowed to sell beer up to 5.5 percentage in the regular stores. So mostly of the beer sales and cider sales are in regular grocery shops. So that's why the difference is so big in the sales of other products in the monopoly.
And can you say something about the sales of organic products, Simon, in the three markets?
Yeah, we can say that the organic sales are biggest in Sweden because I would say also the monopoly the Swedish monopoly Systembolaget is the one that are pushing the organic sales most. They have the most tenders for it and so on. And then on the other products, it's much lower. It's you don't have the same amount of beers that are organic, and even less spirits. But yeah, it's Sweden are the leader when it comes to organic wines so far. I think I'm quite sure Finland is number two, and Norway is on the last place here when it comes to organic wines.
And here we tried to get some data also of the sustainable products, but we did not manage to get it. But that is for sure something that is going have an increase in terms of rate also. Where all the monopolies see as an advantage if the product is sustainable, but it's mostly Systembolaget that restrict the tenders for it. All right, let's go to the next slide, Simon.
Yeah. So the top selling countries for wines 2022 is, you can see that number one in Italy is Italy, in Sweden and Norway, and it's number two in Finland. So it's for sure the strongest wine country when it comes to red wines, and overall I would say for both red and whites maybe. But then you can see Chile is number one in Finland, and that's a bit. In Sweden it's number seven, and in Norway I think it's number five. So they have a very good position in Finland, and that's not only but mainly because Concertoro is a very big company, and they have done a very good work in Finland, and on lower prices the Finnish people also like more fruit driven wines, it seems to be. But yeah, that's then France and Spain, as you can see, are the two leading countries when it comes to red wines. When it comes to white wines, you can see that South Africa is very big in Sweden, and they have always been. Of course, there's some volume products and bag-in-box that take these, the big volumes. So maybe they struggle a bit more, South Africa, when it comes to higher priced wines. But in Sweden, when it comes to volumes, they're number one. And in Norway, Germany has always been strong as a white wine country. And we go to Finland again. Concertoro made a good work here for the white wines as well. So Chile is number one. It's a bit so when it comes to Finland, Chile is a bit different. So otherwise, France is strong when it comes to higher priced white wines in all countries as well. And then you see Spain is quite good as well.
Mm.
And you have a full list in the end where you can see all the countries. I think, isn't that correct, Kalle?
So it will be a list of, you can see top 10 countries in the end on the extra slide, and you will also have references where you see find sales statistics for the different markets that could be useful in order, and you can also find more figures there. Okay, let's go to the next slide with the taxation, Simon.
Yeah, so the different countries has the different taxations. So if we see per liter for or we can take per liter for wines, it doesn't matter if it's red wine or white wine. The alcohol tax we have calculated on 13%. In Sweden, it's a fixed taxation between 8.5 to 15. The alcohol tax is the same. It's more or less the same in Finland, but in Norway, you pay for every half percentage of alcohol. So if you have 15 in red wine, the alcohol tax is higher than 13. But otherwise, it's a fixed alcohol tax. It's the same. It doesn't matter if the wine is expensive or cheap. But here we have calculated on 13%, and then it's more or less €2.5 in Sweden for a liter, and it's almost €6 for a liter in Norway, and almost 5 in Finland. So Sweden have a much lower alcohol tax when it comes to wine, and you can see the spirits down there, and it has a quite big impact on the consumer price, especially when bottles in a lower price segment, and for bag-in-box, then it's a really big difference. But we have done a small pricing example for wines here, as you can see. So you can see the difference if Concealed Wines would buy, or there's a tender for a wine, that if we buy a wine Exceller for around €2, in Sweden the consumer price would be around €7, but in Norway it's 11.50, and in Finland it's €11. So it's a quite a big difference when it comes to low priced wines. If we look in the end that when it comes to expensive wines, if we buy a wine for €100, Norway is the price, the country where you have the lowest price. That's because they never add on more than €11 per bottle. They have a maximum roof there. So if we look a little bit more low down, you can see how the markup, the monopoly markup is. So you can also understand a little bit how the markup works. So the Swedish monopoly, they take the importer's selling price, and then they have a monopoly markup of 14.7%, and then they have also a fixed markup on €0.5 more or less. In Norway, where it's the same system, they have 22% instead of 14.7, and a little bit higher fixed markup as well. So for a low priced product, then both the alcohol tax and the monopoly markup is higher. But if you look that for more expensive wines, one more time, they never add more than €11. So in the end, the expensive wines get cheaper. But if you look to Finland, they have a markup of 54%. So that's very high. So for more expensive products, the the price gets very high in Finland. So it's different systems, and all these monopolies, they're not going to make too big profit. So this is their, or how should we say, Kalle? It's their calculations to have a business without the profit, but
yeah, exactly. I mean, the monopoly have another purpose. It's to control the alcohol consumption in the country, and then they do a slight profit,
and if you
but
see
much lower profit
for
than many other
example,
distributors.
Finland, they have a higher markup and a bit more expensive, but they also have more shops. So maybe it's a bit and more smaller shops and smaller store villages and stuff like that. So and that probably cost a bit more to have a system like that, and then they need to have a bigger markup. So maybe they can have a very good service, but it gets more expensive in the same time.
Yeah. All right, let's move to the next slide. All right, good. So then we have so far we have covered a bit of figures about the market and taxation, and also like what the shelf price end up on. Now we're going to go to the head section, the differences in the tendering, and we're going to start off with the type of tenders, and then we're going to cover these points. So then I will hand over to you, Akshat.
Yeah, thanks, Kalle. Hi, everyone. So I will start with explaining like the first section of differences. So let's look on type of tenders. And as we are comparing all the three markets, so we have highlighted different points here. So which type of tenders or which type of contracts are available for each market. So at Systembolaget Sweden, there is something which is permanent listing tenders, and these ones usually are for a 9-month contract period, and for organic it's around 12 months. And then there is something called TSV, which is one-time buy tender. So usually if you win this one, then there is a one-time purchase and a good introduction to the market. And then there is a seasonal launch, which is mostly for Christmas. And
can I ask Akshat on the TSV? Can the product be repurchased a year after?
Depends on the tender, not for everyone, but for some of them it can. And that totally depends on the sales which have been in the first period. So they look on the sales figure, and then each year it can be purchased more, the same volume or even higher.
Good.
And then comparing it to the other monopolies, like in Vinmonopolet, there is a permanent listing, which is this contract is mostly for 12 months. And then there is a one-time buy. And then in the third category, permanent or one-time buy, we will explain this more in the coming slides. But just to understand, it's like the tasting takes place, and then the monopoly decides whether it will be a one-time buy or a permanent one. But we'll come to this in the further slides. Comparing these two to ALKO, it's quite similar. There is a permanent listing for 12 months. Then there is a service product listing, a one-time buy listing, and seasonal listing. In seasonal, it's mostly like it could be like for summer wine or things, and then the tender and the amount of volumes asked are completely different depending on each contract. Also, one more note that all these markets have exclusive assortment. However, Conceal Wines just deals with exclusive assortment in Sweden. Okay, moving to next slide. Tender announcements. So like it's quite similar to the previous slide where we tell like which kind of tender comes out when. So for Systembolaget, like we have 4 times a year like launch plans. Like let's say that launches takes place 4 times in a year, and these 4 would be coming out. Like we've put together examples of the dates. Like this year in January we had the new tenders which will launch in September this year, and then new tenders would open in March, June, and September. Then looking on TSV, which is the one-time buy, this usually comes out 9 to 10 times in a year. So it's every month there are new tenders what they're looking for, and usually like it's on the last Thursday of each month. But some months it's also not there, so it's 9 to 10 times in a year. For ALKO, we get new plans twice a year, which is for coming 6 months. And then for seasonal announcements, it's 3 times in a year. So this usually, we don't know the exact dates, but it comes out in February, which came out now 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then we will have new tenders in end of May and new tenders in end of September. Then looking on Norway, we have 2 times, the plans come out 2 times in a year. One time is the 1st of June and one time is 1st of September. Also important thing to look on these tenders is that for Norway and Finland, once the tender is announced, that's the final requirement. So it's directly open for application. While for permanent listing, FS, what we call in Sweden, we already have a launch plan before, and then the final requirements are announced on the opening date or start date of a tender. So then at the start date, the tender is open for application, and the process starts for samples and tasting, etc., what we'll cover in the coming slides. All right, Simon will talk about specifications now.
Yeah, I will hold it a bit short here. So I just say that for tender, there's normally a taste specification, taste style, and the most specific one that is the Swedish one. The Systembolaget has the most specific one, and ALKO and Vinmonopolet is more general in their descriptions. Yeah. So here we have 3 examples of 3 tenders that is open now, and yeah, there you can go in and read those afterwards. But as you see, in Sweden, it's more criteria, so it's very important that you look on this style. Because if the wine is not in the style that they're looking for, it doesn't matter how good your wine is. It will not win, because it has to be in the taste style of their descriptions. So if the monopoly asks for barrels or wood, you have to have barrels or wood in the wine. If they want a luscious and jammy wine, you can't offer a very tannic and nuanced wine. Then you will probably not win the tasting. Yeah. And then we also have specifications of the tender when it comes to volumes. In Sweden, there is a volume, minimum volume that is required. Then we always have to have that volume and secure that volume, because if we don't have that, when we're going to launch the wine, we cannot launch the wine. In Finland and Norway, they are more open to the volumes. And you can also ask us, well, we don't have this whole volume that they ask for. Can we offer less? And normally we can offer less in Finland and Norway, but not in Sweden. Also, the size of distribution, Sweden and Finland, there you can see directly how many shops the wine in the tender will go out to. In Norway, they decide, well, if the producer only had 1,200 bottles, then you will probably only get a one-time buy. But if you have 20,000 bottles, then you will probably get the fixed volume if you're in the top and win the blind tasting. So it's a little bit depending of how much volume do you have of the wine. And in Finland and Norway, you can very fast also switch to the next vintage. In Sweden, normally you have to have all the volume required of the same vintage. Yeah.
Yep. And just to add an advice, in Norway, where it's so unclear with the volumes, of course the volume can have a great impact how you want to price your product. But a suggestion is to discuss with the importer how to price the product and what volumes to put in the offer.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think we can skip this specification of the tender of the vintage. We said that before as well, more or less. Yeah,
we skipped this slide. We are a bit behind. You will have this in the presentation, guys. And this we can also actually skip. It's just small note, like on the grapes and classification, how it differs a bit, but let's skip that slide as well. All right, we go to the judgment paperwork stage, Akshat.
All right. So comparing the three markets, like how do they judge the paperwork? So first, if somebody applies for the tender in Sweden, so normally in Systembolaget they do a pre-selection, like where they select wines which will go to the tasting. But most of the times, most of the wines are going to the tasting, but still there is a pre-selection round which has to be noted in this case. And then for Vinmonopolet and ALKO, like most will pass to the tasting if the technical criteria is fulfilled, but that has some exceptions, like when Norway says that the lowest price will only pass to the tasting. So that is what we have in that case. And then for samples, like all the markets have, like if you compare the three markets like Sweden and Norway, you can send samples in 750 ml bottles without labels, so it's a blind tasting completely. And then this has an exception when on the tender specifications or requirements it's clearly stated that they are looking for final packaging samples, then you have to send the packaging. But in, I would say, 96% of the cases, it's always 750 ml, even if the tender is asking for a different format. While in Finland, if you compare it to Finland, final package is always required, which means that if you don't have a label ready or the wine ready, you can send samples in two bottles, and then you can send a mock-up along with it so they can have a look at how the final product would look like, and this has to be in the correct container format. So if it's a bag-in-box tender, then a bag-in-box mock-up has to come along with the glass bottles, as an example. And then also important point to note here is that all the three markets, all the three monopolies, they accept tank samples, but they have to be prepared as a final product. So this opens up the opportunity when the wine is not completely ready and bottled, but still it can be presented. So
tank samples. You can prepare samples in a lab as a final product. So you need to maybe try to filter them and so on. So they are stable and everything. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, Simon.
All right, Simon. On the tasting session.
Yeah. So differences in the tasting. In Sweden, you have 3 blind tasters, and one of those 3 are almost always the buyer. So if it's a French wine, the French buyer is there, and that tasting also starts with they reading this taste description that you can see in the tender, and then they taste the wines. So they will always have that in their mind, that taste descriptions. And it's totally blind, and no one sees the bottle or anything like that. So and they only judge the wine out of the taste and the quality. And in Norway, it's instead of 3 tasters, it's 5 tasters, and there's no buyer in that tasting session. So it's well, that's the difference there. And in Finland, it's also a blind tasting, but the difference here is that they do the blind tasting, and they set a score there, and afterwards they judge. They also add the 75% when they do their final decision is from the blind tasting, the score of the blind tasting, and 25% is on other requirements. That is then how the label looks like, or how the bag-in-box looks like, if it's a good design or not, and if there is some advantages in the tender request, like it could be an advantage that you are organic, then you can get some plus points for that as well. Or if it's a lightweight bottle, that is of advantage. And when it comes to spirit, they judge it 50% of taste and 50% of other. So there, the bottle is even more important, that it's going to look good. Yeah.
And you see, if you look on our website, you see on other requirements what is of advantages for Finland in order to understand that part. Okay, let's go to the next one. The selection of the winners.
Yeah. Keep it fast here. Systembolaget only shows the winning product that has the highest score in the blind tasting. And there is some TSV tenders, these one-time buy tenders but they can be rebought if they sell well. There are some of those that they can be that they also buy the second in the tasting, and sometimes also the third. But it's also more normal that they do that for beers than wines. And in Vinmonopolet, they can buy one, they can buy two, then they can buy all the top three wines, for an example, in a tasting. But it's depending a little bit if there's the three wines and they sort all that were in the top three and all were really good, and maybe the number one and number two really had small volumes, so they can't be a basic listing, ongoing contract, then they maybe buy the number one and number two as a one-time buy, and they buy number three as a basic listing. So they can buy more products. It's depending on the availability of the volumes and the price and the quality of the products. And in ALKO, as we said, they always only buy one for the permanent listings. For the one-time buys, they can buy more, but they judge not only on the blind tasting. It's 75%. Then the other is 25%, as we said.
All right, Akshat, a bit of the result announcement.
All right, so now the paperwork stage is past. Samples are tasted. We tell you now about like how and what exactly we get in the result from each monopoly. So which we share with our with the producers who participate with us. So Systembolaget, they in Sweden, they tell the score of your wine, the score of the winning product, and if they buy one or two, and who was the name of the wine or name of the product and the producer, and how many total number of participants were in the tasting. This information doesn't come in one time, but it comes over a span, like a period of time in between, but we send this information to the participants. And then in Norway, we get the position of the wine, the selected product name, the winery or company name, and list of all the participants who were in the tasting. Comparing it to Finland, ALKO, so there you have a selected product name, your approximate position, and number of participants. To understand approximate position, it's divided in three categories: best third, middle third, and last third. So if there's 30 wines in the tasting, so 1 to 10 would be best third, and then 11 to 20 would be middle third, and then the last third. And also there is a second round for quality control, where the first winner would be sending the wine for quality check. They would be comparing the samples and then telling the final winner information to the importer. And also there is a second winner in this case. So if first one does not meet or does not pass the quality control in the first time, then the second winner gets a chance to be selected and launch the wine. So that's how the results are, the amount of information given by each monopoly.
And I mean, Systembolaget and Vinmonopolet also save references if the initial wine or product that was selected could not be launched. And also, as Akshat say, we get the information on different stages. So what we try to do is normally to try, like when we have received a rejection, we try to communicate this as quick as possible. And then once we get other information, we share it. All right, we go to the next slide. All right, guys. Sorry to be over about 10-15 minutes. We have done all the slides. So final, just a producer advice, what to think of. No, but we believe that's like good to understand these differences and what makes sense to focus on the different markets. And a typical example is like in Norway and Sweden, where the monopoly does not judge the appearance of the product. I mean, focus what's in the bottle, while you have to make sure in Finland, if you compete, to have like a good presentation or do a good mock-up. And then if you want to be more proactive in the market in different ways, understand how to be that and discuss it in with your importer, and then be ready to invest a bit of time. That's our advices. And if you have some other questions or so on, you have our email addresses in the footer of this presentation, so you can just get in touch with us. Questions and answers. Leah, let's see if we had some questions and answers. Or one sec. Let me see if we have some.
Everyone can also write their questions, and we will give them answers later on.
Yeah.
And correct?
Yeah, we will. Exactly. I mean, Leah's collected all the questions.
So I think
here
we
is
can
one
take them
question
later
that
on
came. Yeah, but we received a number of questions. One question was like, could you sell directly to the monopolies? And I can take that question. No, you cannot sell directly to Vinmonopolet or Systembolaget. In ALKO, they accept direct offers from the producers. And if you go to ALKO's website, you can find out how to make those offers directly. And then here we got more questions. Simon, can you answer this question? Which wines below 5.5, could they be sold in the supermarkets?
I'm a bit unsure there, because they changed a bit rules there later on, so we will have to take that later on.
Yeah.
And sell spirits at
But we do like this. We'll let all continue and put the questions in the chat, and we will make sure to send out on email tomorrow the presentation, and in the end we will put the Q&A part. That will be the best, and you will get the like all the questions and the very best answers, and also reference links if it's needed for some answers. And then we also welcome when we send you the emails, if you guys have feedback, like how we can improve these sessions and if it's useful or not. So we really appreciate feedback. You can drop it, of course, in this chat, but also on the email after. And also suggestions of what could be next topic, what could make sense, in order to find to put it on. Nothing else. You will also see in the end of this presentation how you can use our website, where you can subscribe for tenders, you can submit tenders and so on, and then also a lot of useful links, but you will see it later in there. Akshat and Simon, you want to say anything more to the audience before we stop?
No, thank you for watching, and have a great afternoon and evening.
Yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and it was nice to give you the insight and compare all the three markets.
Yeah. Ciao.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.